And I'm so glad that I did because it really reframed everything. It made my relationship with money better. It made the way that I make decisions about every aspect of my life so much clearer and easier. And I have so much more confidence and surety in those decisions than I ever would have under my former mindset. Welcome to the Wealth Beyond Just Money podcast with Rebecca Hayes. Hi, friend. Welcome back to the next episode of Wealth Beyond Just Money. Today, we're going to be talking about what does wealth really mean? And I know you may be thinking that sounds like a super simple question, and I already have my answer ready. But we're going to be talking about answering this question and why your answer right now might be evidence that you are thinking way too small. Okay? So let's talk about that. What does wealth really mean? If you open up your phone and just search on Google and have them define, and just do a quick search to define wealth, you're going to come up with actually a couple of different answers. The dictionary itself has different answers to what wealth means. You might see a definition that says something like wealth is an abundance of valuable possessions or money. Or you might see a definition of wealth that says it's the state of being rich, specifically referring to your material possessions. And then there's a few other definitions, but what I think my favorite, personal favorite dictionary definition of wealth is a plentiful supply of a particular desirable thing. This definition opens the door to so many possibilities of what wealth could really mean. And it really fits in well with how we define wealth here at Wealth Beyond Just Money, because for us, wealth is not just about your material possessions. It's not about being rich in the traditional sense with having a large bank account. It's not necessarily just about the valuable possessions that you have. And so I say this all to say that despite what definition in the dictionary you see or you get, the root of wealth actually comes from well-being. It also mean prosperity. And so there's some roots that get traced all the way back. And if we think about what wealth means today versus what it maybe meant when the word originated and where it came from, it can give us a lens into further opening that door and reframing how we think about wealth, which is perfect for what we're doing here. And so before we dive in further, I want to take a step back and tell you all a story. When I was really just starting out, very early in my career, I made it my main priority to save. I wanted to be quote unquote smart with money. So I was always watching my spending, saying no to hanging out with friends, right? Limiting my eating out and going out even. And what I found was that I was constantly stressing over how much something cost, how much money I was letting go. And I ended up wasting so much time trying to save a few pennies or dollars here or there until finally I had had a very long week. I had worked way over my 40 hours and I was exhausted. I was on my way home and I nearly ran out of gas trying to make it to the station with the cheapest gas. And you may laugh. I laugh at it now. But a lot of people do this, right? A lot of us think this way. It's about the dollar amount that is going out in that moment. And we want to try to minimize that as much as possible. That was me. I was a super saver. I had been taught, from a very early age that it was important to keep track of all your money and it was important to save as much as you could, right? To spend less where you can. And I don't necessarily disagree with that nowadays, but I don't do it in the same way. And I certainly don't think about my money in the same way. It was actually in that moment that it dawned on me, like me sitting behind the wheel of my car at the gas station, waiting for the gas to tick up in my tank so that I could finally go home, that it dawned on me that something had gone terribly wrong. What was I doing, really? I was watching my life just sort of tick by. I was measuring it in these dollar figures and in specifically how much I was spending, how much money was going out for a specific thing. And it really caused me so much stress, and it made my life so much harder, not easier. And you may be thinking, well, that's just how money is, right? Money is a stressful thing, and sometimes it does. Like sometimes the way that we do handle our money does make life harder. This is the way that most of us think about wealth, that it's solely about money. Words like financial freedom, financial independence, being a super saver, all of those type of words come to mind when we think about wealth. And if we want to take that a step further, some people think of what we call here at Wealth Beyond Just Money a false sense of wealth or a false sense of abundance. And that's when we start centering on, we think of wealth as being able to buy more stuff. Coming back to that dictionary definition of, it's about material possessions or, being able to buy more things. That's sort of one way of thinking about wealth. There's another way of thinking about wealth that comes back to the dictionary definition of being rich and watching your bank account soar, right? Or maybe having multiple bank accounts that just keep ticking up and you watch that balance grow day after day or month after month. And that's sort of the definition of wealth. And at Wealth Beyond Just Money, we challenge you to think broader than that. Because if you think wealth is just about money, you're thinking too small, way too small. It doesn't have to be a bad thing, right? If this is your definition of wealth, if it starts with money, that doesn't have to be a bad thing. Money is a tool and it helps us get the things that we want. It helps us have the experiences we want. It helps us do a lot of things. The problem is when we think that money is all wealth is. When we think wealth is the amount of money we have in our bank account, in the possessions that we're able to buy, in the houses and the cars, instead of wealth being the money that allows us to do everything that we're able to do, right? So when we think of wealth as the amount of money we have, instead of thinking of wealth as all we're able to do. And that brings us to what do we mean when we say what is wealth? How do we define wealth? We take a more holistic approach to wealth. In fact, our definition covers your whole life. We have our special framework called the Wealthy 7 framework that helps you sort of build and personalize your wealth to fit what your goals are, your ambitions, your dreams, how you view the world, what you think about money, your profession, your life, and everything in between. And I think that's such an important distinction because, one, when we think about wealth the way that I used to, with it being solely focused around money, how much we had, how much we were spending, how much we could save, for most of us, myself included, it causes a lot of stress. It causes us to make poor decisions because we are constantly weighing the cost, or we're constantly trying to, see our bank account tick up just a few more dollars, or we're sitting out on experiences because we can't afford it, or we don't want to spend that money, or we want to see our bank account continue to grow. Again, standalone, not bad thoughts, but it's the way that it leads us to live our lives that when we look back at it, we're like, what are we doing? Right? I had that moment. I had that epiphany several years ago now. And I'm so glad that I did because it really reframed everything. It made my relationship with money better. It made the way that I make decisions about every aspect of my life so much clearer and easier. And I have so much more confidence and surety in those decisions than I ever would have under my former mindset. And so that's what we talk about here at Wealth Beyond Just Money. If you flash forward to where I am now, I take multiple trips per year. I'm talking weeks at a time taking off. In the last year, I've been to Europe twice. I've been to the beach. I've been to the mountains. I live in the central US, so you can imagine, I'm traveling quite long distances to get to some of these places and to experience different parts of the world, different cultures, different people, making, new connections. And it changes a lot for me. But I also just in my everyday life, right? My new mindset, my new, reframing of wealth really gets me into I get to be, the I'll take the check friend when we go out to dinner, when I take friends out, when we go do things. And if you don't know what that means, right? You've all experienced it, I'm sure. You go out with a group of friends and while I'm not saying that everybody shouldn't pay their part, but sometimes it's just really nice to be the person that says, you know what, don't worry about it, everybody. I've got it. I'll just take the check. This is my treat. And so I get to be that friend without having to worry, without, being concerned, without feeling guilty about the way that I'm spending my money. And I also have more than enough time to spend, spoiling my nieces and nephews, spend it with family, spend it with friends. I have all the things that I thought would never be possible. And I even had them working a 9 to 5, a corporate job. And I know that sounds crazy because we all hear, how things have to be a certain way. We all know that sometimes the corporate landscape can be quite rigid, but there are ways to make it work for you. And I am living proof that it can be done. And so all of those things, the autonomy, the freedom, the having, confidence in my money, in my profession and where I'm going, and the decisions that I'm making throughout my life have been such a profound benefit of re-examining what my definition of wealth is and what wealth really means. And so that's what I want to talk about with you. What would it look like if you could leave behind feeling bad with money and about money, right? What if you could stop laser focusing on financial wealth and, retirements and watching your savings account either jump up or, deplete as you spend money on things that are important to you, that create experiences that you really want in your life? And what if you could, stop being disappointed when your definition of wealth right now doesn't measure up? Because if you've ever been that person who is very laser focused on money in their definition of wealth, you'll know that if you set a goal, like let's say that you decided that over the next 3 months, you're going to try to save $1,000. Okay. And if you actually hit that goal in 3 months to save that $1,000, how do you feel when you've achieved it? For most of us, we may be a little bit excited in the moment, right? We're like, yes, I did it. I didn't think I could do it. I sacrificed a few things and I made it work. And it's great for about 5 minutes. And then you do one of two things. Then you either wonder what happened, why that feeling just sort of depleted, and you have the $1,000 in a bank account, but but why, right? Like, what does that really mean? Why did I do that? Type thing. Did it really give you the peace of mind, the confidence, the buffer, whatever the purpose of that $1,000 was? Did it actually give you that? Or you'll have achieved the goal, you'll have hit the $1,000 in your savings account, and you will immediately turn around and set a new goal. And so then you're just still on that hamster wheel, still chasing, still running, trying to hit the next goal in time. And a lot of times, if we keep doing that, we'll end up stressing ourselves out along the way because we're just constantly running from one goal to the next. And we're not being thoughtful in the way that we're structuring our goals. I'm not opposed to goal stacking, which is what I kind of call that, where it's like you hit a goal and then you hit another goal and then you hit another goal. But it has to be thoughtful. It has to be in line with what you are actually trying to achieve, your goals, your ambitions. What is the purpose of having that goal or those stacked goals? And so that way it doesn't feel empty when you get to the end and you've actually done the thing, which is amazing, by the way, right? Like you should definitely celebrate anytime you achieve a goal. But if it's not purposeful, if it's not a thoughtful goal, most of the time when you reach it, it either feels empty or it feels like I didn't do enough. I need to set a new goal and I need to keep pushing and going further. And so, again, all of this changes the way that we think about wealth. For us, wealth covers your whole life, and it's also being super thoughtful and pragmatic in the way that all of your areas of your life work together to build your wealth. It is personal to you, and there isn't anything that anybody else can say or do to change the way that you think about wealth when you're being true to what aligns with your goals, your ambitions, the life experiences you want, the professional goals you have, all of the things. Those are all personal to you. And that's what we strive for here at Wealth Beyond Just Money. And actually, that is where our WBJM method comes in. This isn't another, cookie cutter system that tells you to budget harder or hustle more. The WBJM method helps you step back, identify exactly what's out of alignment with your current strategies and your current definition of wealth, and it helps you create a personalized plan across our Wealthy 7 framework. Because real wealth is about more than just money. And so, if this is something you're interested in, the doors aren't open just yet, but you can jump on the wait list now and stay tuned for when I launch the WBJM method in just a few weeks. Okay. In the meantime, if you want to know, where you're at in your wealth building phase and you really want to hit the ground running when the doors open on the WBJM method, then you can take our free quiz that's all about figuring out which wealth building phase you're in so you know what you need to get started. And we'll give you some helpful tidbits and tips so that, you can hit the ground running and already start making progress. So I'm also going to include the link to the free quiz below, but feel free to take that and figure out what makes sense for you, where you're at. And if you want to reach out, please do. You can get me on Instagram or TikTok at Wealth Beyond Just Money, and we cannot wait to hear from you. These are two great tools to help you get started either with your first step or to help you build, your more holistic plan if you're ready to jump in and commit to building your personalized wealth plan. But for today, what I would love for you to do, if you're intrigued by what your definition of wealth is or what does wealth really mean, I would love for you to take just 5 to 10 minutes and journal on what do you think wealth means, right? Let's get to the heart of what your definition is and just give yourself free rein to think about what does it look like? What does it mean? And even if you want to have a little bit of fun, what would you do if you had wealth? But just a quick couple of minutes. Don't limit yourself. This is like a brainstorming session from back in school where you're just jotting down any thought that comes to mind, right? It can be really informative for us to just spend a few minutes and really center on this one question. What does wealth really mean? And if you're not much of a journaling person, like I said, you can treat it as a brainstorming session. Or if you're more of an active learner, you can go for a walk, turn on your notes app on your phone, and hit the voice command button and just let it type out your thoughts and just think out loud about what wealth really means, what does it look like, and then you can reflect on what comes up for you. Because for most people, they're quite surprised by what they discover when they really start pulling this thread in terms of what does wealth really mean. So I'm excited for you to do the same. And if you want to reach out to me and tell me how it went or what came up for you, I'd love to hear from you. You can catch me on Instagram or TikTok at Wealth Beyond Just Money and send me a message. All right, until next time, keep building your wealth beyond just money.